Story number 1. An encounter on the back roads that almost cost us. Sometimes it's not so much the experience that gets to you, but more it's the location and the time. This happened about 3 years ago, when I went on vacation with my cousins. They live in a town outside of Belgium that's pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. The reason I was going was because I had a couple of weeks off that I requested from work. Of course, with the time off, I was looking forward to seeing family that I haven't seen in almost 10 years. The family that lived out here lived in a small cabin that was surrounded by farmlands. Anyways, this strange experience happened on one night we ended up heading into the main town. Now, let me tell you something. I'm originally from Los Angeles, so yes, you can imagine my surprise when all I was used to were the downtown lights and traffic. Out here at night, it was completely dark. Out here, the only source of light you had were the headlights from the car or the poorly dimmed street lamps that you would see scattered every mile or so. So, we go into town and explore, and we're heading back at around midnight. Their home was about an hour away, so we had a bit of a drive home. During the drive home, my cousin Danny says, "Hey, you know what? I have a great idea. Sure, it's going to take us a little bit more time, but let's go into the nearby mountains. There's this part where we can see everything below us. I know you're going to like it." It sounded like a great plan, despite the idea that it would take us further into the middle of nowhere. So we get off this lonely highway and we start driving down this back road, and soon it takes us up to this mountainous area. We soon entered a set of woods and were surrounded by miles of trees, and for some reason, I was feeling nervous at this point. Danny reassures me there's nothing to worry about and we continue on. Eventually, we reach a point in the road where we have to go slower due to the tight turns, and that's when we first see something. Up ahead of us, we are able to see what looks to be 2 glowing orbs, and they're shining from our headlights. I of course started sweating, but Danny starts laughing when he takes a look over to me. It was a wolf, and the lights were reflecting off its eyes. Laugh all you want, Danny, but we weren't laughing further up ahead of us. We resumed driving, but about 10 minutes later, when we reach the top, we can see a figure of somebody stumbling around to the side of the road. I knew this time it wasn't a wolf since they were standing on 2 legs. Seriously, imagine the image of being out in the middle of nowhere, miles away from anyone, and now you just see somebody stumbling around. Danny lets out a nervous laughter as we can now see a woman walking up the road. Of course, we put the brakes on and we come to a stop right before we reach her. This woman, let's just say she looked like something out of a movie. Long dark hair, a bright wedding dress, and matching looking expression on her face. Not going to lie, but that image still stays with me. Slowly she started walking up to our car, and at first we thought perhaps she needed something. The first thing she did was say she was lost and she needed a ride back to town. We of course were pretty hesitant about it, and we didn't really want to open the car to a stranger. All the while, all these ideas are going on in my head, thinking that this is how it all ends, here in the middle of nowhere. I mean, come on, why? I didn't even get to enjoy my aunt's famous meals. Moving on, after about 30 seconds of pondering and awkward silence, she starts walking away from us. This was when Danny started to feel like maybe something was wrong. So, against me telling him not to, he steps out of the car and walks over to her. Big mistake. I'm now watching from the passenger seat as my cousin is walking up to her. You see, I had my window down, so I can still more or less hear what was being said. "I'm sorry, miss, but you can understand her concern, right? Look, if you need help, I can call somebody for you." All of a sudden, she grabs his arm and she shouts out into the nearby woods, "I got him. Come on out now. He's ours." Out of nowhere steps this larger-looking man who honestly looked like a bodyguard or something. In his hands, I could see he was holding what looked to be some sort of cable. I'm guessing for tying something, or in this case, someone. That someone being my cousin Danny. This guy walks up in the most strangest manner. It's almost like he was enjoying this very moment, and also enjoying the looks on our faces. I'm about to get out of the car, but Danny manages to escape, and he's beelining it back to the car. He hops in right away, but that's not before these people start kicking at our doors, because guess what? Of all times, the car is choosing not to start. Figures this would happen to us in the middle of nowhere. While this is going on, the man is hitting the window, and I can see that the window is about to give out. Finally, the car chooses to start, and we get out of there without looking back. During the drive home, I actually tap on the window ever so slightly, and it breaks, scattering parts of the window on my lap. Once we do make it home, we tell my aunt and uncle about it, but of course they don't believe us. Let's just say that once we showed them the damage done to their car, they changed their minds. Ever since it happened, my cousin refuses to go down that road, and I myself haven't been back there since. Story number 2. Car troubles at midnight. Just imagine this for a second, will you? Imagine you're driving out in the middle of nowhere, and at night, mind you, and suddenly you realize you forgot to fill up your car. Now your car soon comes to a stop, and you realize you're in the middle of nowhere late at night. This is what happened to me back in the late 1990s, and even though it was so many years ago, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. After all, you have an experience like this, it's not like you can easily forget it. So, to get started, let me take you back to when I was just your average ordinary college student. It was 1998, and I was attending the University of Pennsylvania. I lived in a small town in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and I drove about an hour to and from school. Now, mind you, it wasn't anything too special, but there would often be times I would have to drive late at night. This created a problem for me as I wasn't a big fan of being out at night, especially on a lonely highway. This is where I found myself one late evening, returning back to my house. You see, I had chosen to go see a play as part of an assignment for my theater course, but by the time it was finished, it was now around midnight. At this point in the drive, I was already out of the major town, and I was pretty much out in the complete dark. I'm pretty sure you can guess what happens next. See, me being the student I was always looking to save some money. This would often mean I would cut it pretty close when it came to filling up my car. I can still recall the many times I would barely be able to make it home. There was even one time my car completely stopped just outside of my hometown, but thankfully for me this was during the daytime. Well, as it so happened, I was being cheap this evening, and soon enough, I started noticing my car was starting to slow down. The more I tried to press on, the more I realized that I was out, and soon the car came to a stop. Here I am, as I mentioned, out at around 12:30 a.m. on this back road with no houses or anyone around me. Of course, if this would have taken place at least 10 years later, I might have been able to use my cell phone, but with no way to call anyone, I was forced to begin walking to find a call box. Luckily for me, I'd seen one about half a mile away. So, in the cold November rain, sorry I had to make that reference, awesome song by the way, I start making the walk heading on over. I won't lie, but without any source of light, walking around that late in the early morning hours really did make me feel uncomfortable. I just felt that at any given time, someone was going to jump out from the side of the road and take me away. Well, I do make it to the call box, and I happen to call AAA. I gave them my location, and they said they'd send somebody out in about half an hour. Sweet. Well, that gave me enough time to return back to the car and await for somebody to come help me. Soon, I'm able to see my car in the distance, and once inside, I sat down and waited. Not even 2 minutes go by, and I could suddenly see headlights heading my way. Awesome. Looks like the guy from AAA got here earlier than expected. This car now parks behind me, and the person driving just sat there with their lights off. This was when I started thinking that something else was going on, because not once did they attempt to get out. Actually, the more I looked at their vehicle, the more it seemed to be just your average ordinary four-door car. This didn't look like something AAA would drive. Honestly, all I was thinking at this point was, well, this is where it ends, isn't it? He's going to wait until I get out of the car and then he's going to take action. Great. Now what am I going to do? All of a sudden, I can hear a car door opening and someone stepping out. I still remember what they were wearing. A red jacket with dark jeans, boots, and a mask on. That sight immediately sent shivers, as I now saw he was holding a large wrench. I'm screaming inside at this point, and he's now walking up to my car and starts hitting the back of it. This causes the back of the window to break. Mind you, he isn't even saying a word this entire time. and I knew that at any moment he was going to walk over to my door and break the window. Honestly, all I could do is hope AAA would arrive, but just in that very moment, I am able to see another set of headlights coming my way. This forced the stranger to stop what he was doing, and soon I was face to face with the familiar AAA logo. With help finally here, this guy makes a run back to his car, and now he drives off, never to be seen again. Let's just say that instead of staying there, we ended up driving to the nearest town and talking to officers. Sadly, since I didn't get to see his face nor the license plate, he was never found. Story number 3. It should have been a normal drive home. I'm pretty sure this isn't just me thinking this way, but don't you wish you didn't have to deal with people that bothered you late at night? This was just one of the many nights where I wasn't exactly in the mood to being followed down some lonely dark roads. Okay, so let me tell you where I was and what exactly I was doing. I was 22 years old when this took place, and this was around 2004. I still remember that year because it was the year I finally got a brand new car. You see, I was used to driving my dad's old Honda, but finally, after I saved enough money, I bought the Jeep I always dreamed of. That's not really important though. What is important, however, was now that it was summer vacation and I had my new car, first thing I wanted to do was go on a little road trip of sorts. See, I live in Santa Monica, California, and I was driving up to visit some friends of mine who lived in San Francisco. Overall, it's about 7 to 8 hours of a drive. It's pretty uneventful for the most part. See, the 5 isn't exactly the most exciting highway to take, especially when you reach the part that's just endless miles of farmland. Anyways, I spent a week with my friends and I'm now returning back home, only this time I decided to take the 101 instead of the 5. It's more or less the same thing, but I was unfamiliar with the 101. Anyways, I left my friend's house at around 10 p.m. and I was thinking that this way I wouldn't have to deal with the traffic by the time I would arrive home. Honestly, I was hoping to get home before 4 a.m. Now, right away, I had this bad feeling. Actually, I almost considered just leaving in the morning, but part of me said it would be better to get home sooner rather than later. I actually called my friends, telling them that I was coming back, but I called them again minutes later, telling them I changed my mind. Hey guys, I'm actually heading back to your house. I'm not really feeling too good. Sorry, it's me again. I guess it was nothing. I'm going to go back home now, so I'll call you as soon as I get there. After finishing the phone call, I'm driving for a couple of more hours until I eventually reach a stop. This was, I'd say, about 30 minutes outside of Gilroy, California. Up where I was a series of mountains with back roads and lakes. It's really nice during the daytime, but at night, I truly felt like I was in some sort of bad dream. It's like getting this feeling that someone was waiting for you, just that you couldn't see them. So when I arrived, I counted 3 cars in the parking area. One I'm guessing for the person working inside, and the others I'm guessing who were taking a break like me. So as I entered inside, I'm welcomed with this very unorganized store. It seriously looked like it'd seen its better days. The signs inside looked to be barely holding on, and most of the food and snacks were still in their boxes, yet to be placed on the shelves. I almost considered leaving right there and then, but I ignored the details and I go to the back to pick up a Dr. Pepper. As I head over to the back of the store, somebody steps out from the men's room and walks over to me, presumably to get something from the fridge. First thing he does is he just stands there staring. At first I thought maybe he was looking for what he wanted to get, but as I started paying more attention to it, the more I realized he was just looking at me. I mean, seriously, I could give you a picture if you really wanted to see me that badly. Anyways, I go to open the fridge, but that's not before he opens the door for me. I'm sorry, excuse me. Let me go ahead and get the door for you. So, which beverage did you want? I told him not to worry about it as I grabbed a Dr. Pepper, and I now walked over to get some trail mix. Honestly, I was hoping he would have left me alone, but it still continues on. I now head over to the opposite side of the store, toward the entrance where I could see the trail mix I kept my eyes on. Just as I'm about to turn the corner into the aisle, there's the guy again, and he's waiting for me. I'm sorry, but I didn't get your name. What was it again? Okay, well first off, I never did give him a name. so I just gave him a random name, then I grabbed my trail mix and paid for everything and left. That should have seriously been the end of it, but once again, it's not. As I head on over to my car, I now notice there's something different. Now there's a red old pickup parked right in the back of my car. I mean, literally, it was stopping me from getting out. I'm not sure, but it didn't take a genius to figure out that this was done on purpose. Even so, there was a way for me to get out if I went forward a little. It was just going to be difficult. Trust me, my friends knew me as the parallel parking champion. I could get into any spot without any issues. So, using my skills, I'm able to get out just fine. But that's not before I saw the guy from the store step into the pickup and start it up. Great, so that explained who had done it. Not that I was really surprised. As I'm now exiting the station, I'm continuing my way down these lonely back roads. All was quiet for the first 15 minutes as I listened into some music and I had a sip of my Dr. Pepper. Suddenly, I was able to notice something out of the ordinary. You see, I hadn't noticed it at first, but I could see the movement of a vehicle not too far from me. I guess since I had my windows up and music on, I couldn't really see them or hear them. It also didn't help that their lights were off, but suddenly, the brightest lights in the world come on, and I'm welcomed with this light. It's hard to see, but after they turned their lights down, I recognized the same old pickup from earlier. So, let's get this straight. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, being followed by this guy who up until that point, I had no idea what he was planning. I just wish he would have left me alone, but for the next 30 minutes or so, he would keep turning the lights on and off, and he even tried to get me to pull over. He even had a loudspeaker installed in his car and he kept calling out all these different things to me. I'll tell you one thing, I wasn't happy with it, but as the time went on, the more I started to realize the situation was getting worse. Yes, I know what you're saying. Isn't this the part where you should get on your phone? Sure, I can do that, but oh yeah, that's right. I'm in the mountains and cell phone reception isn't exactly cooperating with me. Trust me, I already tried it. What really gets to me, however, is when he says, "If you don't pull over now, then I'm going to have to resort to some serious action." Serious actions? I wasn't exactly sure what this meant until finally I am able to feel a bump at the back of the car. I guess he was tired of playing games with me, and now he was trying to force me to stop. I'm crying on the inside at this point as I kept speeding up trying to get away. Thankfully, I'm able to break this cycle when finally I am able to see some lights up ahead of me. It's like all of a sudden now everybody chose to appear. This was when he started to back up, and I now take the opportunity to exit and head over to a nearby 24/7 convenience store. I waste zero time as I run inside the store and explain what was happening to the cashier. Speaking of the cashier, I'm pretty sure he was confused when he saw me, but once I settled down, I was able to explain everything. He did call for help, but when officers arrived, this person was already gone. Now I have no idea where he is, but part of me hopes he has stopped and learned his lesson, and hopefully he's never doing it again, though that's highly doubtful. My advice? I just hope this never happens to you, so avoid the back roads late at night. That, or make sure you have somebody with you. Story number 5. How not to start off your vacation. Okay, so this took place about 15 years ago, when I was driving to go see family for Thanksgiving. This was during a time when cell phones were just starting to make their way around, but I still didn't have one yet. I remember we had a week off from school, and since I didn't have any reason to stay at my campus dorm, I took the week off to go on vacation. Let's just say that it sure started off in a pretty weird way. It really makes you start to think that there's people out there who love to ruin your excitement and joy. Anyways, the drive to my parents' house from my dorm was about 5 hours. I was studying at the University of Fresno, and I was driving to Big Bear Lake. So yeah, I had quite the drive. My drive mainly took me through a normal highway, but as I started to get closer, I had to go up a series of winding mountain roads that would eventually have me arrive at my house. This was about 2 hours before I arrived. Just so you know, it's around 4 a.m., and right now, I was planning on getting there right before breakfast. I want to say about 4.5 hours into my drive. I remember seeing no cars around me, but I do notice a car that was parked off to the side of the road up ahead of me. It looked abandoned and like it hadn't been moved in years, so I ignored it as I passed it. Well, as it just so happens, it seems that car wasn't so abandoned, because pretty soon I'm able to see some headlights behind me. Also, did I forget to mention I've barely seen any other cars up to this point? I guess that's what happens when you choose to go down some lonely back roads. Eventually, the guy moves right next to my car, and I'm able to see somebody inside with their hoodie on. They're seemingly waving me down, trying to get me to stop. I mean, if it was highway patrol, I'm sure they would have been dressed up in uniform, but this person wasn't. Not only that, but this vehicle was unmarked. I found this weird as I continued on trying to leave him, but the faster I went, the sooner I realized he was keeping up with me. This is when I take a look over to his window, and I now notice he had the window down and he was saying something to me. Giving him the benefit of the doubt, I put my window down, and he's telling me my back light was out. Normally I would have believed him, but this was a brand new car and I just had it checked literally 3 days before I left. I wasn't buying it, and it sure wasn't helping that he already seemed suspicious to begin with. I told him, "Hey, thanks for the information. I'll make sure to check it out when I get home." Apparently, that wasn't an answer he was happy with, because he then says back, "No, you have to stop, now. This isn't a yes or no question. I need you to stop right now so we can take care of this." Wait a minute, this isn't a yes or no question, and I need to stop right now? I'm sorry, but I don't think that's how it works. I call him out for it. He then gives out the most unnerving laugh and grin I've ever seen and heard in my entire life. I'm not talking about your average ordinary smile and laugh from your friend. I'm talking about the kind you see in those suspense movies. This was when I decided I wasn't going to lose him, so I tell him, "Okay, fine, I'll stop. Just give me a second." My plan was to stop and wait in the car for him to get out. Then once he was far enough from his car, I would quickly leave, hoping I could use the small window of opportunity to get away. And so, I did just that. I start slowing my car down, coming to a stop, but making sure to keep the engine on. He follows as he parks about 50 feet away from me, as I now watched as he stepped out. So far, my plan was working. What I wasn't expecting, however, was the baseball bat he now had with him. Surely he didn't want to play baseball right here. All joking aside, he slowly starts making his way over to me, where I finally realize he wasn't going to be using that to help me with the back light. No, instead, I'm sure he had other plans. Once he was a fair distance between his car and mine, I pressed the horn as much as I could. Then I book it out of there, which actually surprised him and caused him to drop the baseball bat. While he's distracted with grabbing and getting to his car, I'm able to get a good amount of distance between us, where finally I decided to turn my lights off. Yes, not something you should normally do while driving, but I decided to take my chances. Up ahead of me, I was able to see an area where I could pull off of the road and hide in my car. Since I figured he wasn't finished following me, I decided to take the chance. It worked, because I see him racing down the road passing me, never once noticing I was just a few hundred feet away from him. Once I figured he would no longer be a bother, I get back on the road and drive all the way home, choosing to go down a different way this time. In case you're wondering, I made it home safe and sound, and soon I try to put the memory behind me. Still, why in the world he chose to do that, I don't know exactly. I mean, after all, I was just driving to celebrate with my family. Me and my family joked about it, saying that he must have been asleep and I must have woken him up from his nap. Though why he chose to act that way, like I said, I'm not exactly too sure, but whatever. Story number 6. Taking the back road wasn't the best idea. I had just started to drive when this took place, so this puts me at around 17 years old, and around 2005. I normally would stick to driving to school or taking my little sister to elementary school, but on this one evening, I'd chosen to do something a little bit different. Since I was at the age where I love to go explore new places, I figured that I could go ahead and drive into the nearby mountains, about an hour away from me. I've been there before with my family, and there's this pretty cool ski resort. That's not what I was really focused on. I wanted to go to this small convenience store that featured some of the best hot chocolate and donuts I've ever had. I can still remember all the times when me and my sister would tell our parents to take us there just to get some. Well, now that I had a car, I was going. But first, I needed to take my sister to her soccer practice. The meet was at 6 p.m., and from there I would have to pick her up at around 8 p.m. Not a problem, I thought. I could go ahead and get there quickly and even bring something back for my sister. I know, I'm such a good brother. So once I dropped her off, I start heading toward the other side of town, where I would eventually go up these series of back roads. They were sort of these lonesome roads where you see them in movies, the kinds that twist and turn as they make their way up into the mountain. It's now around 6:45 when I actually arrive, and I go to pick up some hot chocolate and donuts, and from there I start making my way back. Here is when things started to get weird. Obviously it's dark, and thus far I've only seen a couple of other cars. It's mainly because it's not really the season for visitors yet. Anyways, as I started to enter this wooded area, my sister calls me.
Hey there, brother. Just to let you know, my friend invited me to get some ice cream with her. So, could you pick me up at maybe 8:30 instead?
Well, why not? I wanted to still enjoy the drive, so I went ahead and go down this other road that featured a nice scenic route. After reaching this part of my drive, I now noticed how even more empty these roads were. All was pretty quiet, until I'm able to notice another vehicle approaching on the opposite lane. Mind you, I had my window down so anybody could see me. Not that I think this played a part in the story, but as this vehicle passes me, I'm able to suddenly see through my rearview mirror as it does a complete 180. Now, it starts driving behind me. It was still a fair distance away from me at this point, but the drivers started turning their lights on and off, sort of as to tell me they wanted me to stop. However, something about it seemed off, so I continued on disregarding the warning. At this point, I wasn't too far away from town, so I started to speed up, thinking that I could get away from them. Again, maybe I was overreacting, but I didn't want to take any chances. So as I exited these back roads, I tested my idea to see if they were following me. I'd take about 5 different turns at different streets, and they would do the same thing. Anytime I slowed down, they would. Anytime I would go faster, they follow. Remember, I have no idea why they're doing this, but being the young teenager I was, I had all these ideas going on in my head. Up ahead of me, I saw my chance. There was a train coming, and the lights were starting to blink. Now, let me advise you on something. Don't ever cross the railroad tracks when the lights are blinking. Regardless, I do just that, and I cut it close as the train arrives moments later, causing the car behind me to stop and wait for it to pass. Finally, I was able to get away, and I drove all the way over to my sister's friend's house. Obviously, my sister was confused when she saw how worried I looked, but as not to worry her, I told her that I almost forgot to pick her up. It seemed to work, and we returned home just fine. Who knows? Possibly just some random person bored, looking to play his idea of a game with me? Not sure, but regardless, it hasn't happened to me again. Hey there everyone, it looks like you made it out just fine. Now welcome to the ending of the video. So tell me, what did you think of today's episode? Let me know down below. Also, tell me which story was your favorite. Well, with that, it's everybody's favorite part of the video. It's question time. Let's see here. Today's question is, what sort of car do you drive? And also, what would be your dream car? Let me know down below. But yes, my friends, I know it's that time where we have to say goodbye. But don't worry, because next time, we will be back with even more stories. So until then, make sure to check out any of the other story times you might have missed, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.